And we are live. Okay, it's a reality check with Rishi. It's Thursday, and we do Tech Thursday. And today we'll be talking about Silicon Valley innovation with a serial entrepreneur from Silicon Valley. I call him the entrepreneur guru, and he truly is the guru for a lot of successful ventures here in Silicon Valley, and that is Raj Jaswa. And Raj, he was the CEO of Selectica from IIT Bombay and got involved with TIE, bringing lots of amazing leadership to TIE and lots of budding entrepreneurs over the last few decades. You know, he's a man I respect a lot, and it's great to have him here with us. But let's talk a little bit in context of what's going on today with respect to coronavirus, where we are today. So essentially, we currently in the worldwide 2.7 million cases, 745,000 recoveries, and about 190,000 deaths so far. And when we look at the United States, we are at 880,000, which is actually a pretty large number in comparison to the rest of the world. And we have 85,000 recoveries and about 50,000 deaths. When we look at Santa Clara County, we have, obviously, we are the epicenter of coronavirus here in the state of California. And we currently have 1987 cases with about 95 deaths. But we look at the number of testing that we have done here in Santa Clara County, we have done a total of 21,000 tests. And from 21,000, only 1987 positive. So I'm not sure what this number indicates, but a lot of people had symptoms, and that probably got tested. You have to be approved for the test. And so from the 1987 that got positive, we have had about 95 deaths so far. The numbers are not that high, and the pending results is about 278. And so if you look at the negative test results, that was 187, almost 18,800. So out of 21,064. So that's the number from Santa Clara County. And when we look at what's happening nationally, you know, we have the 484 billion phase 4 stimulus package that was approved. So we were watching it very closely. That was playing out in the Senate. And today the vote was happening. We were watching it live, and it was obviously approved. And looks like phase 3 didn't quite reach the mom and pop shops. With that was about $350 billion dedicated for small business that unfortunately with the Paycheck Protection Program. $350 billion that was gone like smoke very quickly. And unfortunately, seems like a lot of the big businesses benefited from that. And it hasn't quite hit the pizza shops and the restaurant owners or folks that it was intended for with the small business. It went to the Kentucky Fried Chicken enterprise and so on and so forth. So this is the reason why we rolled out this one, 484 billion, and I believe like 320 billion is dedicated for small business. And let's see how this one works. I'm very hopeful that this will reach out, trickle into the small businesses that actually power America's economy, and that will produce some really good impact. And then when we look at the unemployment, I believe it's up to like 25 million people who are unemployed. There was a 4 million uptick this week in terms of number of people who are applying for unemployment. So this number continues to go up. And I was talking to a buddy who's actually on this call, and we were talking about how this might spike to like 50 or 60 million people. And this is unprecedented. We have never quite seen that. And so there are references to the Great Depression is what we are talking about. And, you know, so we'll dig a little bit deeper in terms of the economy, about tech, about investment, and all sorts of great issues. But also I would like to touch upon with Raj, because he has a very spiritual lifestyle. And I would like to also touch upon the intersect of a spiritual lifestyle with technology and why it's important for us to have a sort of a spiritual living And, when I look at Raj Jaswa and some of his ideas, some of his findings that he's posting, it's always a very learning experience watching him on social media. So with that, Raj, I welcome you here. It's a delight to have you. So how's it going, Raj?
Thank you, Rishi, first of all, for those kind words. Really appreciate. I think the economic picture that you have presented is completely extraordinary. I mean, it's something that, in my 65 years, never saw it. Some people say that, they have not seen this kind of economic turmoil brought onto an economy in such a short time, like 2 months or 3 months, ever in their entire life. So we are living through very interesting times, and as some great philosopher said, better to live in interesting times than dull times, right? And Silicon Valley actually thrives in interesting times, right? The internet boom in the late 90s was interesting times, and Silicon Valley just, achieved some amazing things, and the excitement level, the energy level went through the roof for startup activity. And we've had, half a dozen incredible companies happen because of that. From 2008, from the downturn, the sharing economy took off, and we've had some amazing companies from that. So to me, looking at where we are right now with the extraordinary economic turmoil that's going on, and this unknown virus that has caused all this turmoil and is the reason for that. How do we look? How should an entrepreneur look at it? And that's what I think about it. My friends think about it, and my students think about it, because I teach entrepreneurship on a worldwide basis, and got more than 200 students right now who are studying entrepreneurship, and they're all trying to figure out what problems can I solve that is going to help the people and help me create a great business for the long run. So that's where I'm focused. And in terms of my personal life, the whole idea is we have, if this virus has taught us one thing, it is maybe we all need to have balance in our life, right? We need to, and actually, if we look around us in nature, we are seeing that if mankind does not completely mess up the world, nature has this incredible ability to recover and to become, and to be wonderful, right? For all beings, right? All natural animals and species and so on. So this virus, this little virus, it's not even alive, and is giving everybody some time to rethink as to what personal life is, and what nations should be doing, and what should be happening on a global front.
Correct.
Yeah.
Raj, you said it. So you touched upon a few things, and let's peel the onion just a little bit. And I would like to talk a little bit about. Looks like you are teaching online and with all your students nationally. And tell me how that is going, Raj, and specifically, what are some of the ideas that are coming out from these sessions that you're having some of the very most brilliant minds across the world. So let's please share a little bit about that, Raj.
Yeah. So the wonderful thing is that, since I focus on entrepreneurship, you know, entrepreneurs get opportunity when the economic world gets disrupted. That's a fundamental fact. It's like, once you had the internet disrupting, the business on a global scale, all kinds of new ways of doing business resulted in the Amazons and the Googles of the world. And then, when social media came along, live video came on the internet, that created a whole set of another set of new opportunities. So the same way, the economic disruption that's going on right now is generating a lot of hectic activity on so many fronts. So I think we have to start with medicine and with biotech and with genetics and with the technologies that are now available on laptops and connected computers that allow people to go ahead and create vaccines, do all kinds of tests, and create a solution, medical solutions. So, medicine and biotech is going to be an explosive opportunity for entrepreneurs. The next area that one can think about, which was disrupted, was the hospitality industry, the travel industry, the restaurant industry. All of these have been disrupted. And I was talking to a friend today, and he said, "Look, till now, AR and VR, augmented reality and virtual reality, was mainly something that you did for entertainment, for games. But now, with this AR, VR, it is possible to start experiencing travel, adventure, and a whole bunch of other activities which will provide you, kind of very enlightening or liven up your life, right? So AR, VR is going to start having some major AR, VR is going to have some major impact everywhere else. Because of because of the travel restrictions and shelter-at-home policies that have been put in place, unprecedented for democratic countries, and that too on a global basis, a lot of behavior, which, I think we had looked at as being something that is futuristic, science fiction, is now people had to adopt it. Common people, normal people had to adopt it. So if you look at telemedicine, people don't think of it as now being abnormal at all. It's like, the way I want to get my doctor to check me out. Yeah. So telemedicine is going to explode, and people are not going to go back to the way it used to be, where you drive for an hour to take an appointment with the doctor, you sit in the waiting room for an hour, then he checks you for 10 minutes, and then you drive back home for another hour and a half. So you're wasted pretty much the whole day for a 5-10 minute meeting with a doctor. People are not going to go back to that. So telemedicine is here to stay. And, when telemedicine comes, does it really matter that the doctor is within driving distance? No. You can be treated by doctors anywhere in the US, anywhere in the world. So you can see that telemedicine is going to, completely change a lot of things that we had assumed about how physicians interact with their patients. So telemedicine is going to be. So I would say that as you go to the sharing economy, the Uber economy, the Airbnb economy, it's like every segment of kind of the services that consumers need and have is up for change. And I think entrepreneurs basically have to figure out what their passion is, what problem they would love to solve, and then go after it.
Great. Very, very nicely said. And Raj, you know, when you look at telemedicine, it's already playing out. There are organizations like Kaiser Permanente that have been doing this for many, many years. But pretty much every organization has had to step up because the initial diagnosis, our medical doctors are doing it from their home offices and they are talking to patients. So it's already happening as we speak. Perhaps we are not using the best of technologies. So that's the opportunity that startups have to figure out, you know, how they can work. In fact, they can work with specific verticals, right? For example, for the medical industry, there is a very specific set of online solutions that could be rolled out that will help with telemedicine, but also with education, you know, and I don't know if you touched upon education, Raj. We are looking at Zoom, and Zoom is having some issues. So there's a huge opportunity. And I saw recently that India has rolled out an online platform, which is still coming up to speed because it's restricted to, I think, the Chrome browser only. It doesn't work for iOS. There were folks who were sending that to me, and I found some issues with there. But everybody sort of, just like how we are trying to find a coronavirus vaccination or kits, you know, we are also trying to figure out the latest and greatest online tool to use. So let's talk about education, Raj, because you are teaching folks across the world. And what kind of tools or what do you think is currently lacking with online education? You know, is that a booming area that is going to create a lot of revenue opportunities for companies?
Absolutely. You're right on the money. You know, I actually, you know, teach online entrepreneurship on an online basis to almost 200 students in India, you know, running regular semester long courses. And, you know, I started using Zoom about 3 or 4 years ago. And I have to say that, you know, I've always loved it. And I'm just happy that, you know, Zoom is now pretty much the dominant consumer and almost business, you know, two-way, multi-way video conferencing system tool. And, you know, the entrepreneur that started it, I think Eric, you know, he's got to be given full credit for creating such a wonderful product, in spite of the fact that there was competition like WebEx, Citrix, I would say Skype, and yet Zoom has basically, you know, taken the market. But, you know, Zoom is a general purpose tool. And I would say that if you, for every segment, ultimately the online transition of how that particular industry works is going to result in specialized solutions. So I would say that, you know, along with Zoom, I use a product called Edcast, started by a good friend who's a wonderful serial entrepreneur, Carl Mehta. So edcast.com is a EDX-based portal. And, you know, I have to use Zoom and Edcast as two different applications. But, you know, I would expect that over time, you know, Edcast and online two-way video conferencing will integrate so that the education portal and the video conferencing, the way you connect with each other, all become one experience. Along with it, you know, I would say that, you know, there's going to be all kinds of additional widgets or functionalities that are going to have to come into this two-way communication just for education itself. So just like, you know, for telemedicine, we are going to end up with specialized video conferencing systems, etc., or applications. I think the video conferencing systems are all going to be on smartphones. I'm using a smartphone. I see Rishi using a smartphone. So we are all using smartphones. We are not using our laptops anymore in order to do this video conference, which is open on a global basis on so many social media platforms and YouTube, etc. So I think there'll still be applications, but cloud-based applications that run on your smartphone. And, essentially they will have, the special things. For example, for telemedicine, security is very important. Privacy is very important. Clearly Zoom doesn't have it, but, access to the medical records on an automated basis makes total sense. So right now, Palo Alto Medical Foundation, where I go, has its PMF application. Zoom is the other application, and some of the two applications have to come together into a seamless thing so that my medical records, my doctors, my video conferencing experience, my trackability, the recording of all the sessions, everything happens and is one seamless experience, right? So clearly only an entrepreneur can pull all of this together. So I'm expecting some good startups to happen in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me okay, Raj? Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Very clear. Very
okay,
clear.
Good. Because I'm having some internet connectivity issues. So I'm actually using my phone. Usually I use my laptop, but as it turns out. So I'm sorry, I was fidgeting a little bit. That's the nature. In fact, for the last few days, we have been having some issues. But anyway, so you talked upon a few different areas. And when we look at how you actually touched upon something which I would like to bring up now, which is the mind shift happening, right? I think what you are talking about is in adversity, which we are currently going through, there's an opportunity. And which is what we are observing with all these, everybody like you are thinking about, what is that innovation that will change the world in the future? What can we do? Like the healthcare industry is looking at vaccination, test kits, antibodies, PCR, all that kind of stuff is happening. Everybody's thinking very actively. And when you put the best of minds that come together, Cepheid from Sunnyvale rolled out a test kit, 45-minute test kit. It was earlier, it was a 4-day process down to 45 minutes. Because there was a point of time, if you remember, Raj, we were shipping out the test kits from here to Atlanta, Georgia for the testing.
I know.
So it's better with 45 minutes, but boom, Abbott Labs came out with 5-minute testing. And on Tuesday, we had a bunch of medical doctors and they were saying that they're actually using those test kits. They called it the 15-minute test kit, which is absolutely okay. 5 minutes, 15 minutes, doesn't matter. So we have been innovating with that. Then I see what's going on locally here in Saratoga, Raj. I know your kids went through the Saratoga High system. Now Saratoga High School students, they are using 3D printers and they're actually building these face shields and they're donating it to the Palo Alto Medical Foundation, which
That's
is
amazing.
phenomenal. Everybody is doing something. We are building face, like we rolled out, you probably saw that, the pandemic preparedness effort. We have people from all parts of Silicon Valley building out masks. We see this as an opportunity to help. And that's the Silicon Valley mindset. When we see something going on, we cannot stand on the sidelines. We don't believe in pointing fingers. We believe in jumping in and building masks or supplying groceries to seniors. Very interesting story, Raj, was the fact that the senior center in Sunnyvale reached out and said, we need help to get food boxes to our seniors because they come out here every lunch time to pick up their boxes. Can you help us out? And they had a very specific request that we want Mandarin-speaking population who can interact with our seniors. And lo and behold, we had like 10, 15 Mandarin-speaking volunteers from locally. When they heard that, they were all willing to help out. Even young students from Saratoga High School, from different high schools stepped up and said, look, I can speak Mandarin. I would like to help out. So this is a phenomenal thing playing out where everybody's trying to chip in and help out. And it seems to me, what you touched upon was that mind shift that is happening. When you look back last year, we were burning the Amazon forest, like 20 football fields a day or some number like that. It was just atrocious. And we seemingly had no regard for planet Earth. And it seemingly, it seems like divine intervention where planet Earth says, okay, I've had enough of this, and you guys figure out how to deal with this. And, who could have thought that this whole economy would shut down the way we are today, hunkered out at home? I mean, last year, who would have even, I saw videos of Wuhan, Raj, where, people were, it was like a ghost town and people were standing on top of balconies and they were screaming. I was like, wow, this seems like a scary movie. But then, it's kind of playing. And then in Italy, they're singing soap operas. I don't know what they're doing. Operas, they're singing operas. And, something bizarre is happening all over the world. Who would have thought of? So in terms of, where do you see this mind shift happening? So I was chatting with, here's my theory. The economy is sort of on its way down, and it's the reality. I mean, it'll take us a few quarters, and I don't even want to speculate when will we hit the bottom. And for me, it's seemingly that the mind shift will happen as we slide further and further away from what we used to be. So would you like to touch upon that, in terms of how do you see the future? How would the thinking evolve of mankind, as we go through this crisis?
One thing, at least I have seen a change in myself is I'm not that consumption focused anymore. My whole mindset used to be like, I have to get the latest and greatest Apple phone, then Apple TV, and then, go on the latest cruise ship and then take the most exciting vacation. That whole consumption mindset has changed. And, I personally think that, through marketing and through, mass marketing, etc., basically the whole world had been brainwashed to think that's the only way, only model for the world to go ahead. More consumption, more of everything. And like, forget, fixing things, just throw it away, get the next best thing, right? You used a car for 3 years, you need a new car. You used a smartphone for two years, get a new one. On and on and on, right? So that whole consumption mentality was the driver of the economy that resulted in, I think, the astronomical growth on a worldwide basis of the economy. I think what we are seeing right now is that the GDP across the globe is probably going to go down between 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40% for quarter 3, 2, and maybe 3. And, we'll probably have net negative GDP for the whole year. Now, the question for a lot of people is, hey, it went down by 10, 20, 30%, the gross domestic product. I bought 20, 30% less than I would have, but am I less happy? Just because I've not spent that extra, 30% of my money. If somebody has an annual spend income of 200,000 and they're spending 180,000 a year, and if the economy goes down and they spend only 120,000, are they less happy? And my feeling is that most people are going to step back and say, hey, I'm not unhappy just because I consume less, right? So I have a feeling that the mindset of being a consumer-driven economy that has to spend more and more and more every year is probably going to change. The next thing that is going to change is the government used to be so careful about spending money. But think of what they have done in the last 4 to 6 weeks. They have basically paid their citizens to stay home. They have given them paid vacations, if you want to think of it that way. right? Between the unemployment and between the PPP, basically people are being paid to stay home, right? And you can see that the stock market is recovering, and the stock market is saying, hey, maybe that is the new normal. The new normal is that basically, like, we need to balance, and change our mindset from being a consumption-driven mindset to being somebody that, wants to maximize balance and happiness in life. And, when you see the rest of the world beyond human beings, animals, birds, insects, plants, all thriving, pollution going down all over the world, illnesses going down because of the fact that there's less pollution and less chemicals everywhere. To me, people are going to say, hey, maybe there is some alternative way of moving ahead. And that, this 2020, we were expecting 2000 to be the big, big change, and actually it ended up being 2020, but 20 years later. But 2020 might be regarded as the fork in the road for for Earth in general.
Correct. 2020 is literally providing us the 2020 vision in terms of how mankind needs to be operating. Well said, Raj, very well said. So I have a comment here from Rishi Yadav, and he's talking about, he's agreeing with your sentiments. So Rishi Yadav, would you like to unmute yourself and just talk through it?
Yeah, so maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks back that my Apple wireless keyboard was not working. And I don't think in the usual circumstances, I would have ever thought that I would go and fix it, right? It was just not worth my time. And here was the situation. Apple stores were closed. Amazon was doing a triage for all the right regions. So I had no other choice. So I went and I checked a few online video tutorials. And finally, it took me an hour, and I was able to, now, as I said, I could counter argue that my 1 hour of my time is far more worth than a keyboard, but you don't have a choice here, right? And I was able to fix it, right? So, and that's just one thing, right? But for everything else, before buying anything, I'm first looking at the home. Do I have something which I can use, which I can reuse, right? So even the plastic water bottles, as much as we should not use them, at least I am increasing its lifetime, how I can reuse it few times, right? So these small bits, I think, because we are locked down, we are forced to look at life in a different way. And I think a lot of us are doing it. And I think that's going to have very good long-term results.
I completely agree with you that that's exactly our behavior too. I mean, we used to throw away plastic bags that we would get, and now we reuse them. These are the Ziploc bags, we say that, hey, why do we have to throw it away? Let's reuse it. The yogurt boxes. I mean, it's like, there's no reason to have basically a throwaway economy. And so, I'm, there's so many things that, if anything goes wrong, plumbing goes wrong, we call the plumber. If the hot water stops working, you call the heating and conditioning guy. I mean, it's like the whole mindset has changed now, because the heating and conditioning guy cannot come anymore. The gardener cannot come anymore. Who's going to take care of the plants? Who's going to water the plants? Who's going to, put in the fertilizer? Who's going to put in the insecticides? Who's going to keep the rose bushes going? So all of a sudden you realize that, I always thought my time was more valuable than, getting rid of a few insects on a rose bush, right? Or some powdery mildew on some leaves, I always thought my time was worth a lot more. I'd much rather just call the expert and he'll take care of it. And the whole mindset has changed now. Now it's like, hey, I got to do it myself. And guess what? Having done it myself, I find that actually there's a lot of joy or happiness or enjoyment of actually doing things, rather than solving problems by making a phone call. Doing things actually gives even more pleasure or more happiness. And the more, and I think this is luckily for the world, not just my personal experience or Rishi's personal experience, Rishi others' personal experience. It's a global experience right now. And that's the beauty of it, that humanity, all human Homo sapiens worldwide are going through exactly the same experience. And they're all getting, their mindset is being restructured to a new way of looking at life.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that, Raj. When you look at, there are a few things, right? As we are hunkered down, the family relationships, that's coming together. Like my brother's on the East Coast and I'm doing like Zoom meetings with the family. We are all talking, which we never quite do frequently. It's kind of very interesting. And then secondly, the basic necessities, all we care for. The other day, my wife was, Seema cut some strawberries and I ate that and I said, wow, this is so amazing. And I truly appreciate it because we are in such a situation that, to enjoy these, very tasty, yummy strawberries is like a delight. And then when you look at how we are looking at our daily living, we just care for the basic necessities. And so that's a shift happening, but not just here in Silicon Valley or in California or in the United States. It's happening in China. It's happening in Hong Kong, Singapore, India, Russia, China, all over. This morphing is happening all over. And it's something like we could never have envisioned ever happening. We're all sort of on the same page, which highlights how we are connected. The pandemic impacted pretty much every country. We're all connected in some way. And hopefully we can all share our sorrows and joy a little bit more in terms of, how we evolve. And that mind shift is going to be very critical for us to converge upon something phenomenal. And I don't know where this is going, Raj, but I see some very positive stuff happening from this,
Rishi, can I ask you a question? You're standing for Congress, right? So clearly, your world, or the world that you were planning to be a congressman in, is very different from what it's going to be, right? I don't think the challenges for a congressman who gets elected in 2020 is going to be the same experience as the congressman maybe 2 years ago and so on, right? Once you get elected as a congressman in 2020, what would you think would be your most important responsibilities or most important objectives to achieve in the Congress 2-year term starting 2021? I mean,
you're right, Raj. Yeah, go ahead, Raj. Did you finish?
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, like, what do you think your role as a congressman is going to be?
So, all the notions, all the thoughts, all the agenda policies that we had put together in the last year have kind of like been burned away, literally. I mean, they are gone, poof, disappeared. Because when I think back to those issues and challenges that I thought were so critical, these seemingly have been negated completely. It's a new word. And we are actually rolling out our objective. And we'll touch upon a few areas that is a huge focus for me going forward. And, one is based upon creating a better healthcare option. When you look at what we have today, healthcare is going to be very important. And for example, we were talking about creating vaccinations. And one of President Trump's cabinet members was talking about it. And he said that, look, we might have vaccination, but there will be a price tag for the vaccination. So if people can afford the vaccination, they will be vaccinated. And the ones who cannot, I don't think so we'll be able to provide it for free. So let's say 50% of the population of the United States gets the vaccination and the remaining 50% does not. So what happens to the remaining 50%? How will the economy get back on track? So it's creating this realization that we have to look at a social net. We have to come up with a better offering for American citizens. And in fact, the realization is also happening here in Silicon Valley, Raj, because people in Silicon Valley would say, Rishi, do not touch my private option. I've had this healthcare option for the last 20 years. I've been working, and we really enjoy my doctors. But now what happens if both the spouse, the husband and wife, they do not have a job? Then where does the healthcare option come from? And that's where it's clicking in their head that we need a slightly better program. And so these are changes that will happen, and we have to build that social net. So it's going to be part of my offering. Like Andrew Yang talked about UBI, the Universal Basic Income. And to some extent, we need that universal basic income for people, for a lot of folks here in the United States of America. I mean, we are a very prosperous nation, but that we need a monthly income, because how will people get through? There's already a pricing happening all over. So this is number two, having a better healthcare, looking at social net options. That is going to be very, very important. And thirdly, we're looking at pandemic preparedness. We have to ensure that the choices we make will provide us the opportunity to get through it as quickly as possible, which includes things like electronic medical record, the ability to pull in all sorts of medical history data and to figure out, which of this segment is the vulnerable population, the ability to do healthcare analytics. Those are cutting edge solutions that we have not quite done because they have sat in the back burner, but suddenly they have a huge sense of urgency. And fourthly, when you look at technology, the US has to dominate. There is no backing away from this. We have to dominate the world in terms of online technology, and we have to create hubs and centers where we are innovating truly with telemedicine or whatever else that is happening. All these different verticals that we were talking about, we have to do that. And fifth is, I forget my fifth point right now, but I'll get to it. But these are agenda items that we are building now to put together a story as to what we will do in the first 2 years, once we get elected. And it's going to be an absolutely new world, and it will need new ideas. It will need new energy. It will need people who are able to roll up the sleeves and get into the trenches, and which is what we are doing, Raj, right now. When you look at building masks or building 3D face shields, or having college seminars which are talking about, what about the post-COVID-19 admission process? We are doing career counseling also. We are talking about people. Today, I was having like an hour-long conversation with a friend in terms of providing perspectives, how exactly you could go out and be part of an economy. We are training kids, but also adults with Python programming, Java scripting. Also, we are talking about entrepreneurship with them, right? That's an opportunity. We see this as a huge opportunity for someone like me, who has the energy and who has the understanding of the Silicon Valley innovation economy. So we would like to see how we can get to address all these different challenges and provide a better, much more roaring future of America. The fifth point is related to China. And I've been very, very upfront about it, which is, the manufacturing has been you probably saw that, Raj, over here. Our semiconductor industry, the manufacturing went to China, Hong Kong, wherever else. And we felt we were getting guidance. Our C-level executives were getting guidance from the big 3, big 5 consulting companies that, look, if you do that, you will create optimization. So we have done that. We have created optimization, but at a very, very heavy cost. And now the push would be for self-reliance in America. And that's my fifth point. We have to push for American autonomy when it comes to our supply chain, when it comes to drugs, when it comes to raw material that makes these drugs, right? So those are 5 areas that we're looking at pretty actively. And we are putting together an op-ed piece based on that, because it's going to be a new world, absolutely new world. And we have to be ready, and we have to continue to dominate the world, because if we don't, there are other countries that are waiting to eat our share of the pie, for sure. Comments, Raj?
So let me ask you a question, because, I think we were all here when we saw the manufacturing industry disappear from the US shores, right? 70,000 factories or more essentially, was swept away to China, and probably another bunch was swept away to other countries, right? So essentially, US lost its manufacturing capability. And if you think about it, when you hear that 90% of all pharmaceutical drugs are based on chemicals provided by China.
Correct.
Pharmaceutical drugs.
Correct.
And some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world are based in America. And yet 90%, 95% of all chemicals needed to make those pharmaceutical drugs come from China. I mean, this is just tip of the iceberg, right? It's like it's like and it applies across every industry, whether it's semiconductors, whether it is everything, right? So clearly, if this coronavirus has taught us one thing, it's the importance of having the ability to make something in America, to manufacture at least the most critical products that are strategic to not only our defense, but also to our quality of lifestyle, our standard of living, to what we think is right. Having that brought back to the US. Now that's going to be probably another massive multi-trillion-dollar investment. Now, I would say that US manufacturers may have the desire, the enthusiasm, the entrepreneurship, and everything else to do that, but they don't have the capital. Now, the question is, do you think Congress and the US government in 2021 needs to step up to invest not only the $1 or $2 trillion that is necessary for infrastructure, which never got done in the last 4 years, but also invest the multi-trillion dollars to bring back and provide the capital needed to bring back, essential manufacturing back into the US? Who's going to, are we willing to step up to do that?
Yep. Very good question, Raj. And in fact, that is something very near and dear to my heart as well, because Andreessen Horowitz, he wrote an article. I don't know if you have seen that. And he had tweeted that it's time to build. That was the title of his article, Time to Build. And essentially, this is the opportunity that we have. It's not the time to be shy, to be worried, or to be, lose that sense of aggressiveness of American capitalism. We need to push that, because this is the time for world domination. We have to be creative, we have to be bold, and we have to exercise some great choices, which means we have to invest. We have to invest in healthcare. We have to invest in housing. We have to invest in infrastructure like transportation, because you see how we get stuck in Silicon Valley traffic now, right? It's a problem that's gone across. We are spending so much energy. We need to define zero greenhouse gas transportation. We need to create tunnel systems or whatever else that is needed to create Hyperloop systems to cut down travel time from Stockton to San Jose to 15 minutes. This is the type of investment we need. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Because when I read that article, I said, look, that makes complete sense to me. This is exactly what we need to do. This is not the time to step back and be worried and look at inflation or whatever else, but we need to invest heavily, because this is how we can create a better future for every American. And when we can invest into healthcare, when we look at education, education, look at California. Raj, we are 46th in the United States when it comes to education. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? This is such a tragic, and you look at American students, I don't think so they're keeping up with the students in Asia. This is the time to invest in some cutting edge education. I was fortunate to be part of the California Strategic Implementation Panel for Computer Science, and we have rolled out a K-12, kindergarten to 12, computer science curriculum for every public school child in California. You know, we did that investment a couple years back. It goes live in 2022. We need to do this for all of America. Can we take our innovation economy and supplant it or seed it in different parts of the United States, in West Virginia and Montana, in Louisiana, and create a better economic future? Those are the challenges we have. So definitely we need to invest. We need to have, you know, so far when we look at what the innovation that has happened here, everything has come because the best of the brains from all parts of the world, like you, Raj Jaswa, you came here, you launched startups, you made things happen. And then the new breed of leaders who show up here, they are following the pioneers. They have role models that they can go for. And this is where Silicon Valley can become the role model for the rest of the United States also. We have to show them that secret sauce, that innovation ecosystem that we have here, and make it work, not just in Boston, not just in Chicago, but in somewhere like Kentucky, in the state of Kentucky, or in the state of West Virginia. You know, we need to look at other options. And this is really firing me up like nothing can, Raj. There's a huge opportunity, and we have the energy, we have the ability, we can roll up our sleeves and make things happen. You know?
I completely agree that you know, the US needs a new industrial policy, and the same way that a developing country has an industrial policy and then subsidizes and provides capital and provides assistance to bringing in manufacturing or bringing in the industries that they regard as important for their economy. The same way, I would think that, you know, a multi-trillion-dollar industries policy, just like we need a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure plan, needs to be put in place, and you know, have Congress take a leadership role in driving it. So a new industrial policy that would bring back and would have a strategic way of bringing that back essentially is, and you know, nobody says we go back to, you know, the assembly line, you know, but there is no reason why between automation, digitization, AI, ML, you know, robotization, etc., why we cannot go ahead and create, you know, the industrial platform for the next century, starting 2021.
Correct. I agree with that. I would like to read a little bit from this article by Mark Anderson. So what he's saying is, part of the problem we have is clearly foresight, a failure of imagination. But the other part of the problem is what we did not do in advance and what we are failing to do now. And that is a failure of action, and specifically a widespread inability to build. And I, you know, when I read this, it just resonated with me deeply, because this is what I talk about. When I talk about 21 minutes to 21 counties, we're talking about rolling out a cutting edge infrastructure that will alleviate the traffic challenges of Silicon Valley. We need to make bold moves. We need to make aggressive moves to address these types of challenges. And that is the future that will play out. When you look at, you know, I think some of our politicians have been there for a long time. And it's like sort of like old school way of thinking. And I don't truly believe that they have that wherewithal to that attitude of getting things done. You know, the old economics has to be flushed away. We need to come up with a new thinking in terms of making bold moves, and we need to invest heavily. You know, forget about all the what the textbook tells you, because if you don't do this now, you know, you'll be left behind. And that's the driving agenda for the op-ed piece that we are working on. You know, we need to address how we can create a better, prosperous future based upon some very smart choices that we make now, and not about being a little careful or timid about, you know, adopting these types of ideas.
Yeah, one thing that just struck me was that your competitor, Anna Eshu, has been on the pharmaceutical industry group, right, in Congress. And she monitors that pharmaceutical industry and has been doing that for maybe a decade or longer. And does she know that in that decade or longer, pretty much all our ability to make the chemicals that make our drugs have been migrated or have been outsourced off to China? Does she know that? And does she realize seriousness of what she has ended up doing and the risk that she has put all the citizens of this nation at by essentially allowing or even promoting the outsourcing of all the pharmaceutical drug chemicals off to China? It's just mind-boggling, and that's why I completely agree with you. It's like out with the old and in with the new, and I think it's time for a new wave of leaders, and in Congress and Senate and even the presidency needs to happen, and we need to essentially go ahead and have people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the right thing to set us up for the next century.
So Raj, I think you touched upon a couple problem areas, and I'll sort of summarize them. What was left unsaid, which is we have two problems. One is we have lots of career politicians in the United States, and when we look at the forefathers, they always said that a blacksmith or a banker or a farmer would jump into politics, serve for a few finite years, and then go back to the profession because they are bringing the real world perspective. And I'll tell you, Raj, like when I look at my city council right here in the city of Saratoga, our elected leaders do not have a real world perspective because, you need to have, you should have held a job. You should have done something to understand how the world operates. And it's like, not a deep understanding of the problems. There is not a deep understanding of the problems, and that how will you ever further and advance and create solutions if you don't have a deep understanding of how the world operates? And that's the challenge that we are hitting, right? So career politicians is something which is absolutely wrong with America. Secondly, what you touched upon, Congresswoman Anna Eshoo is the chair of the House Health Subcommittee and is the #1 recipient of pharma money. And this is a common known fact because people have written op-ed pieces talking about it. There are many, many articles that have been published in Yahoo News and whatever else. There are people writing about it. And as the chair of the House Health Subcommittee, to be the #1 recipient of pharma money, I don't think so it's right. I just don't think it's right because your hands are going to be tied down in terms of making choices that align with the American people. So let's talk about two things. I would like to see, did the House Health Subcommittee ever have a hearing on pandemic preparedness? And I truly don't know. I truly, because the thing is, we found a huge gaping hole, and the Congressional House Health Subcommittee should have been on top of this, and I don't think so it was happening, which is what we uncovered. We completely fell flat. Even in comparison to third world countries, we have fallen flat. This is America, the most powerful nation in the world, and we have fallen flat. Secondly, there was an opioid crisis playing out for a few years. In 20 years, there were 700,000 deaths in America, 700,000 deaths. Why? Because of greed of pharma. What did we do to address that? We haven't done anything. And so those are challenges that is actually front smack and center on people's minds. They are talking about it, and there is an exposure being created, and hopefully our people of the United States will end up making smart choices when they go out and vote on November 3rd. That's what we can hope for.
Rishi, I think basically this particular COVID virus crisis has gone ahead and got everybody to rethink so many fundamental aspects of their life and their priorities. And, I feel that we cannot continue with business as usual And that includes, the representatives that we send to Congress next year. So wish you a lot of luck, Rishi, and a lot of support. And we need to have, fresh thinking and bold thinking in particular in order to go ahead and, do the right things for America and the world.
Well, absolutely, Raj. I have one last thing, Raj, before we
Sure.
wind it up, if you don't mind. And
Okay.
that is related to biowarfare. When you look at how the world economy has come to a halt with the virus, and truly we don't know. I mean, there are rumors that this came out from the Wuhan labs. I'm not going to speculate that, right? I mean, it is, let's say it's a natural virus that came about, but, it has sort of highlighted to every country of the importance of biowarfare, and this is how the next World War III will likely be conducted in case we have that. And so we spent about $5.9 trillion in the last 20 years. 500,000 people have died because of wars that America has conducted across the different world. We have disrupted economies, and we have completely ravaged many, many different countries. And there is so much amount of wastage that goes on with investment in very traditional weapons systems that we have here in the United States. But it seems like we are evolving. I would like to get your thought process on this, Raj. Is it wise for the United States to be spending all this money on very traditional weapon systems in comparison to rolling out an approach to address a pandemic, to address viruses, and to more importantly, put that research and development into fortifying American economy to protect us from that?
The speed at which biotech and genetics and the widespread availability of tools like CRISPR and other things have exploded on the scene, essentially in a decade or more, a few, is probably going to put it in the hands of a schoolboy to go ahead and come up with new kinds of viruses. I don't think people can.
Raj, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just like how a school kid has the formula to make bombs now, right?
Exactly. The same way I'm expecting that, viruses are also going to become not just, conspiracy theory that is being circulated right now about a Wuhan bio lab that may have artificially, created this virus. But I would not be surprised if terrorist cells in just about all countries are, going to start jumping onto bioterrorism. So I'm expecting things to get really nasty and hairy in the next decade or more or so. And the US needs to understand the consequences of bioterrorism on all fronts. If one virus can create such a havoc for our economy, where our unemployment jumps tenfold in 2 months, unprecedented, the GDP drops, unprecedented. I mean, everything is unprecedented from one virus. Can you imagine what will be the consequence of bioterrorism, right? So where a terrorist cell anywhere can construct one. So 9/11 is going to look like child's play at that point. So I would say that, the US has to put its best minds to focus on bioterrorism and addressing all aspects of it, the economic aspect, the security aspect. I mean, it's not something that you can say, oh, it happened 100 years ago and it will happen 100 years from now. I think the challenge, what's different is that 100 years ago, it was a random occurrence. This time, it is too close to not being a random occurrence. See what I'm saying?
Yep,
Because
I absolutely.
I personally believe that the coronavirus could easily be reconstructed in a lab anywhere, in multiple labs all over the world, and you know, within 5 or 10 years, I think it'll become the favorite weapon of choice for terrorist groups. So
Yep,
I'm actually very concerned about this, and US and every country in the world needs to have a strategy to secure itself and protect itself.
and Raj, I am in 100% agreement with you, because it seems to me that American investment philosophy is completely flawed. And the reason why I keep going back to, you know, there is the whole crony capitalism that is to play, the greed that is playing with the American economy with respect to how, you know, our for-profit entities want to maximize their profit at the cost of people. And that is not fair, because, you know, that is not the way this world can advance forward. And then when we look at the lobbyists that are out there protecting, you know, these entities, and they are influencing the politics and policies of America. And this is the reason why I think our American, you know, the foundation of success, you know, those core traits, we have shirked away from there. We have gone down a different path. And that's where we need to come up with a better plan. And like you said, bioterrorism is going to be a big deal. And this is the time we need to come together and formulate a plan on that. You know, we need to look at electronic medical records. We need to invest heavily in healthcare, because this will be the foundation of how we would address bioterrorism that will be unleashed upon this country, and how we can protect ourselves. So we need to do electronic medical records. We need to look at AI machine learning. We were talking about, you know, what is that type of magical formula? You know, if we can do a variety of 4 different options, we can sort of get every patient in America protected. When you look at, for example, test kits, you know, you look at, we have spent probably about more than $3 trillion as stimulus for the American economy. If we spend on test kits for every American and we get that tested, you know, it's $1 billion. So why can't we do that, right? And we are unwilling. Still, there are people talking that, no, not everybody will get vaccination. So this is like crazy. You know, I think our fundamental, the investment philosophy is flawed completely. And we need to bring this back on track. And this is where I'm hoping that a situation like this drills some reality into our head. And that's why we call this reality check, because I think our values have gotten skewed. It's time to bring it back and focus upon this, which brings to my very last question. I'm sorry, Raj, we're going a little over, but I wanted to touch upon your spiritual practice and why it's important for the world to have that, you know. And I see some of your postings with yoga. You know, it's very refreshing to see someone like you, a hardcore techie, an entrepreneur who's done very well, you talking about this, because it's very important for your life. Can you share some wisdom, insights on that, please?
Well, you know, about 15 years ago, you know, I was like everybody else, you know, a total tech junkie. And suddenly, you know, about 15 years ago, it's like a light bulb went off in my head, and I said, what am I doing with my life? You know, if I die tomorrow, then is this what God put me on earth for? And, you know, that's, it's an important question that we all need to ask ourselves sometime, because I think when you actually listen to the answers that you're going to give yourself, you'll realize that, you know, there is more to life than just solving the next techie problem that you have, or the next business issue that you have, and so on. So life is so much more, right? So that was just a kind of light bulb that went off in my head about 15 years ago, and I decided, okay, got to change, you know, got to change. And since then, essentially started focusing on first investigating what life is all about. And that's where, you know, that's how I discovered yoga. And that's how I discovered Vipassana meditation. And that's how I discovered, read all the religions, from Buddhism to Islam to Christianity to Jainism to Hinduism, and then figured out what appeals to me, and so essentially this is a journey that every human being needs to embark on, because life is more than just the economy, more than just the technology issues and problems and those kinds of things. So we have to finally discover, the answer is not that you stop doing your technology and your business and everything else, but you do it in a holistic way, right? Creating a holistic lifestyle.
Yep.
Learning the basics all over again. How should you sleep? What should you eat? What kind of work you should be doing? What kind of relaxation should you be having? I mean, every aspect needs to be reinvestigated. And as you come up with the answers, the more important thing, putting it into practice, right? Changing your life deliberately, not because somebody told you to, not because, this is what you've been doing forever, but when you learn and figure out this is what I need to be doing, putting that into practice and changing your lifestyle on a deliberate basis. To me, that is ultimately the journey that all human beings need to have. And if you basically try to figure out what's right for your body, mind, spirit, and then actually gone ahead and implement those changes, I don't think you're going to be sad when you take your last breath, because you'll have done everything that you thought was the right thing to do. You didn't live your life because somebody else told you to do it this way or that way. You did it because you figured it out. You figured out what was the right thing for yourself to do, and you put it into practice, right? So, and if you've done everything that way, then there should be no regrets. And that's my idea. My whole idea about living is to live a life so that there are no regrets now or at the end of life.
Yep.
So,
Very well said, Raj.
No regrets. That should be.
So interestingly, I had read Swami Paramahansa Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, when I was very little. And one of the things he had said was, if there's any place for a spiritual practice that is right for a practitioner, it is California, outside of India, is what he had said. And so truly speaking, in my years in California, I do believe there is a progression. And, in fact, some of my close friends know that there is a very keen spiritual practice that I have. It's a daily practice. And I wouldn't be who I am if I don't have that practice, because that has truly defined me as a person. My zeal to help people in the city of Saratoga, and now we talk about helping millions of people with this run for Congress. People ask me, why are you doing this? And the only aspiration we have is, how can we address some of the challenges, make people happier, and do some, make it a better world? I mean, that's really my driving force. And it comes from a core spiritual practice. When I have to make a choice, all it takes is to close your eyes and go deep inside your heart. And sometimes these answers will come out, and hopefully we will leave at this note, which is coronavirus, there's nothing wrong with this. It's here in place so that it can reset some of the thinking that we have had, put us back on track, put us back on path, and we can make some good choices that will increase the longevity of planet Earth, but also bring mankind together as a force together where we are addressing the needs of each other with compassion. And that would be a phenomenal story that will play out over the next few years. No matter how this plays out, there will be upheaval. But like today I said, look, I'm sorry to play spoilers. This was my posting this morning. But the story of this is, it will all be fine and good at the very end. So that's where we are heading. And Raj, it's been a delight to have you. Thank you so much for so candidly sharing your opinions and ideas. And this was very, very insightful. We'll publish this video on YouTube. We'll have many more people watching this because there are some very good nuggets of wisdom. So Raj, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rishi, for this opportunity to, discuss things on a very wide-ranging set of topics. Thanks a lot.
All right. Enjoy the evening, and we'll be talking soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.